Hello everyone, it's Brenda from Creative Treats. It's so great to see you here today for another Boxes with Brenda video. Today we are going to be working on a fold flat style of box. It is right here. This is the style of box. You can do it in one of two ways. In this particular case here, I've made it from a pattern piece of paper, and we'll do one of those later. It's a 12 by 12 piece of paper. Or you can make it from a white cardstock and then cut and accent it with patterned paper. I will just talk about the dimensions very briefly here. The sections are sized, I don't know if you can see my cursor here or not, but the first segment is 4 inches wide, and then there's another one at 1 3/4, then 4, 1 3/4, which leaves a 1/2 inch on the edge. And then when we turn the paper this way, then we are scoring at 1 inch, and then the next segment is 1 3/4 inches, so we're scoring at 2 3/4. And then this would be at 9 1/4 to give a 6 1/2 inch segment, and then at 11 to give another 1 3/4, and then 1 inch at the end. So that is how all of the scoring is done on that. And I will tell you a few things here that I wanted to describe, and then we're going to cut one from scratch after I put this together. You will see in here that, you can just see down in there, what I do with these pieces here is I fold them, I put tape on the back of them. I don't know if you can see that there, but I put tape on the back of them and I tape them down because you don't really need them there, but I find that that makes a nice solid front of the box. It just gives a little bit more stability and sturdiness to the box. So that's rather than just cutting the paper out and wasting it, I just stick it down, and it gives a nice a much cleaner edge, I find, by having it just scored rather than cut. The other thing that I wanted to point out here is, so in the design here, you remove everything that is white, and then the green bits is this kind of T shape right here that forms the outside of the box, and then everything else is tapered. So where it forms the outside of the box, it's always a square edge, and then other than that, it would be tapered in a little bit. And you can see that in the instructions. And all of the instructions are going to be, as usual, I upload them over to the Creative Treats Community Facebook group. So if you want to go over there, you can download the instructions for this and all kinds of other boxes and cards. So once you've got these tucked in here, and you make sure you trim these off because we don't need the flaps of the box to be excessively long. That's why I've cut those down. And you want these tapered so that this will tuck nicely into there. Okay? Then all you have to do is you have to have this tape here, and then normally what I do is I fold it over just one segment. I peel up the paper, and then since everything should be nice and square in theory, all you're going to have to do after I peel up that paper is this edge here should then just fold rightly nice into place, just like that. And then you will put that in there, and then you can decorate it on the front. But that is how this box goes together. So it's made from a 12 by 12 piece of paper, which I think is pretty good to be able to make a box to hold cards, and it is quite thick. It's 1 3/4 inches thick. So that is perfectly sized to hold mini slimline cards. Do I have any here? Like this. Now this one here is made, so my mini slimline cards, this is an example of one right here. It is sized at 3 1/2 by 6. So I size my envelopes a 1/4 inch bigger. So the envelopes are 3 3/4 by 6 1/4, and then I make the boxes another 1/4 inch bigger. So that's why it is sized at 4 by 6 1/2. One thing I wanted to point out, and I will be doing a slight variation of this one in the future, but after I was making my own envelopes, which are quite nice, I have discovered that you can get a number 8 envelope is pretty good also This is an example of one of these. I just got these at the dollar store, and they are a little bit longer. They are actually 6.5 inches long. So the card there's a little bit of extra space in the width, you can see, that you don't really need, but rather than having to make your own box or envelopes, that's pretty good. So what I still need to do is to adapt this to make it so that this is just a 1/4 inch bigger, because that will give a little bit of wiggle room for this size of envelope. Okay, so you can stay tuned for that. In the next week or so, I will do a revised version of this box with the dimensions properly for that. Now, what I wanted to show you is how we do this from a bit more scratch, if you will. I already have, in the interest of time, it pre-scored. Now let me just make sure that I do this right. So I'm lining this orientation up here with how it is showing there, in that this here is the 1/4 inch, oops, yikes, is the, sorry, 1/2 inch side, okay? So following what we do here, what I'm going to do is in all of these segments, I am going to cut up to the second score line. So there's a score line here at 1, and then this is at, I think, 2 3/4, if I'm not mistaken. Now, what I wanted to point out to you is everything that is shown in green here on that cross is these we all want straight, and everything else can be tapered. Okay, so this right here is the only straight line we need, in addition to this one here at this end here. So those ones are cut straight. And actually, you know what, before I do this, I'm going to do it like this on the back side so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, so this here is one score line. I don't know if you can see that actually. I'll try to press it a little bit darker. Okay, so there is a score line there, and here is the second score line. Okay, so what we're doing is we're cutting down here all the way to here, and in fact we're going to do the same thing. We're going to kind of cut down all of these ones here to there. But what I wanted to show you here is that this is the only one here that we need to remain straight, okay? And then we're going to taper this off here a little bit, not quite that much, so that you can tuck the lid of the box in, okay? And then all of these other edges here, they get to be tapered a little bit, okay? And tapered a little bit. So there's no, you don't really need to cut them straight into here. You might as well just taper them from the very beginning. So that's kind of what I'm going to be doing, is I'm going to be tapering this and tapering it here. And then I'm going to cut that away, okay? So I cut here straight, and then everything else I'm going to taper in kind of like that. Okay? So I've cut it straight here, and then I taper this. And I always try to do, when there's very few straight lines, I try to do the straight lines right at the beginning and get them out of the way so that I don't mistakenly taper when I want to go straight. So once those are cut, now everything else is going to be on a slight taper, because it just helps them fit a little bit better in. So this is getting tapered in like that. This one is tapered in like this. I think you can see that. I taper this one a little bit like that. This one here gets tapered in slightly like that. And then I taper it in slightly like this. Okay, so we've already taken our straight ones that we needed, and then everything else we can taper. So I'm going to cut out this corner here, do the remove of those 2 segments here. I know it looks like one segment, but there is that middle score line here, okay? And the reason we need to have it this long is we need this to tuck in and this to form the top of the box, okay? And then what we don't actually need is the tabs that fold in to be quite so long. So what I do after I've cut all of those in on a taper, these tabs that are going to be folding in, that is this part right here. I don't want them to be overlapping, so I am just cutting them off right here and right here. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to cut that one off there and cut that one off there. And then, as far as what we have to do for tape goes, I usually just rip those out afterwards. They're usually pretty close to cut. And I might, just so that, well, these are going to get folded in. Let me just get my eraser out. Just I don't want any of this, these eraser marks to be showing when we open the box. So I'm just going to get rid of them. But where we tape is, let me see, I'm just getting rid of this quickly. We're going to need to put tape on this because that's going to get folded down there, and this is going to get folded down here. So we're going to put the tape on that. Sometimes I put it in this direction like that at the top and the bottom, and other times, depending on how I'm feeling, I'll just put it on the side like this. So both of those can work fine. And I just peel that up and then tuck that down into place like this. Usually I do all of the taping at the end. Taping at the beginning and then I do the assembly, but in this case I have one more little bit of tape that I'm going to need to show you guys, and that is going to be here along this edge here. And in fact, I think I'm going to go to a slightly thinner tape. This one is a little bit thicker, but I like to, if I can, fill up, either use, this is 1/2 inch, so use tape that's pretty close to a 1/2 inch, or something that is closer to a 1/4 inch, and then I put the 2 strips of it to pretty much fill that up, because this is the thing that is holding the box together. And I'll do that. Oh, and before you do the assembly, do make sure that you have done all of your creasing on the fold lines, because it's a lot harder to do when you're not pressing down against the work surface when you're trying to do it floating around in the air. So we'll do that there. And then we're going to just do that same little trick again. I'm going to fold it in one segment. Well, it's actually going to be folded in 2 segments because this is one segment. And this is going to be the other side of the box. So this is going to be what, I don't know if you can't really see that well, but that is this thing right here that I put at the back. And I will just turn it around like that, and then this, in theory, should just mostly line up pretty perfectly. It's all scored well. And there we go. That is how that box is going together. Again, this is sized perfectly, and for mini slimline cards that are in envelopes that are sized at 3 3/4 by 6 1/4. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure to see you again. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and I hope that you're gonna go and make some of these boxes yourself to either hold these mini slimline cards or to hold some other surprise that you can give to somebody as a treat box. And as I said, I will be back within the week with a slightly revised dimensions so that they will better hold envelopes that are actually 6 1/2 inches. So I like to have a little bit of wiggle space, so it'll be 6 3/4 by 4 inches. Okay, thanks. Talk to you later. Bye bye.